Hi guys, how are you all? We've got Jeremy and Jay with me tonight, and we are talking UFOs. How are you guys?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, choice.
Good. Yeah, what got me into the paranormal right at the start was a UFO encounter that I had as a child, and it always comes back to haunt me, and I thought we'd have a bit of a show talking about that because there's so much stuff going on at the moment that it's worth talking about. Jeremy was telling us about something that happened in South Africa.
Yeah, that was going back a time. I was about 3 when it happened. So, 94. There was a school in South Africa, I think it was Zimbabwe. They had 62, 63 students, so they'd seen the same thing that had happened. They'd out on one of the lunch breaks while the teachers were talking in the meetings, and had someone else sitting out there with them watching, and they've all described the same phenomenon as a UFO has come out of the sky and black figures started walking towards them. Yeah, it's different.
Well, it sounds very eerily similar to something that happened in Melbourne a long time ago, and Jay knows a little bit about that, don't you?
Yeah, well, that was all the kids were out in the playground, same thing, and a shiny disc-like object appeared in the sky in front of them. Teachers all saw it, everything, and there was actually residents around the school that saw it. And apparently, that the old tale of the Men in Black, they turned up to all these people and said, "That's not what you saw." So they were all silenced until probably, I think it was 12, 18 months ago, there was a Channel 7 documentary done about it, Channel 7 News, and a couple of people that are still alive, they came forward and told what they saw.
You're actually you're really underselling that story. It's for those of you that don't know, it's actually Westall in Melbourne. It happened in the 60s, and people call it the Australian Roswell. And what you didn't say is that the UFOs actually landed. I think there were 2 of them. One of them landed. Yeah, one of them actually landed in a field opposite the school, and all the kids could see it. And they wanted to go out, but the teacher, who's still alive, and he was interviewed on that show that you were talking about, that Channel 7 special, and he didn't let them initially, but it didn't take long before they all went out there and they went up to the fence line, and they actually saw a being come out of the ship before it went back in and it took off. And yes, what you were talking about is in the following hours and days, they got a visit from the Men in Black, and they were all silenced.
As well.
Yes, they did. And they were silenced. And as you said, they're only starting to come out about it now because it's been so long that they figured, what the hell, you know. And it is such an interesting story, but it just leads you to think about a lot of the major cases that have happened around the world. Do you know any of the other ones?
Not off the top of my head without having a look through.
Oh, you know one. I know that.
Pardon?
Roswell.
Yeah, I don't know a heap about Roswell.
You don't?
No, not a heap. Well, I'm only young.
Well, I wasn't even around then. I'm not that old.
That's what I mean. Like you're saying, how they were silenced. You know, with the the aerial school UFO incident. These were kids between the ages of 6 and 12, and when they got questioned about it, they all had the same sort of interpretation, being there from different backgrounds, socioeconomics and things like that. But they all came back and said pretty much the same thing. It was a black being that came from the ship, and they all, well, there was a few kids that turned around and said they had sent telepathic messages to the children about looking after the world and looking after one another, and then they just disappeared.
Yeah.
Like how many sightings have happened where you got the one in Australia, you got the one here, that all got similar lines to what's going on?
Oh, there's just so many of them, mate. I could rattle a heap off, but obviously going into the details on them all is probably too much for a short show like this, you know. Like I said, I saw my UFO, I'll say my UFO, my experience with the UFO when I was about 7 years old as well. And no one believed me initially. I told my parents about it, and they said, no, it's just, you're young, it's your imagination. It wasn't until the news the following night when they actually said that there had been a UFO sighted, and obviously multiple sightings, and it was on TV, and that's when they said, okay, maybe he did see something. But being that was in the 70s, back in those days, UFOs, ghosts, all of these sort of things were a very touchy subject, and people didn't talk about them, not openly anyway. So it was kind of brushed under the rug and sort of tried to forget. But me being me, I needed to know more, which is what ended up leading me into this whole world of the paranormal and everything. So it was what got me started, and that's why I'm very passionate about UFO incidents. But even talking about the UK, you know, I had my experience around that same sort of time. There was the incident at Rendlesham Forest where a UFO crashed, and you know, all the stuff happened from then. In fact, Nick Pope, who back then used to work for the Ministry of Defence, he's the one that investigated that case, and he did say he would be interested in coming on the show at some point in the future, but he's very busy with his tours and everything at the moment, so we've got to let him do that. But he's a really interesting guy, you know. He's like your Fox Mulder. He's the one that investigated this stuff. He knows more than he can say, and lets us know next to nothing about what he knows. So it's very interesting. But you know, that there's even more in the UK. But you know, America's where the big things happen, like Roswell, that's the one that sort of changed the world. You know, and then you had the Kecksburg incident and the Phoenix Lights, which is one of the biggest ever known, witnessed by thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So yeah, I love UFOs. I love talking about UFOs and things. You know, it leads into, you know, what is a UFO, who is piloting the UFOs, where do they come from?
Well, somebody talking about piloting the UFOs, you also had the Aurora, Texas UFO crash.
Yep.
And where it specifically states that they buried an extraterrestrial pilot. It's like, well, you know, aliens aren't real. Not real, but they insist that there has been no, you know, supporting evidence for extraterrestrial life. And then something goes on saying that, you know, this alien or extraterrestrial was buried at the cemetery in Aurora. Like, doesn't make sense.
What fascinates me is like every case that ever comes up, somehow the Men in Black turn. Doesn't matter where it is, England, Australia, UK, America, wherever, that, you know, somehow they end up coming into the story to tell people that's not what they saw. You will forget what you think you saw.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And actually,
yeah, but I suppose that's done for a reason, though. Sorry, Gary. You know, if they didn't come out and say what they say, or you didn't see it, and then they suppress it for ages, you'd have mass hysteria.
Yeah, but the interesting part about the Men in Black, which a lot of people don't acknowledge, is everybody thinks they're from the military. There are cases where people have witnessed a UFO, they haven't told a soul, and they've still been visited by the Men in Black. So who are they, and how do they know that people have witnessed UFOs when they haven't made a report or they haven't spoken to anybody about it?
Yeah, what happened after Roswell too, people were contacted by men in black suits, black ties, white shirt, black hat, weren't driving a black Cadillac, you know? It's bizarre.
It'd be understandable if it was the 21st century and this thing was happening, because they got bloody cameras everywhere. They're just going to go, oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's why things changed now. And in fact, there is footage somewhere of a man who said he was being tormented by a man in black, and he had, he didn't have security cameras, but there was a shop not far from where he was that actually had security cameras, and actually caught this guy on film watching the house. So your typical Men in Black, it's like, I guess like the movie, you know, black suit and everything, and it started back in the 40s, so that would be a good representation of what men would wear back then, you know, the little hat, the sunglasses, the tie and suit and everything. And over the years, people think that yes, they are military type people, and in some cases they probably are, but there there are many other cases where they actually say these men in black are very pale of skin, almost no hair, and usually have dark sunglasses to cover their eyes. But on the odd occasion where they've actually seen the eyes, they say they're very large, very dark, almost alien-like. So one of the rumours going around is that they could be alien-human hybrids. And
what you've just described there is Tommy Lee Jones in his older age. Pale skin, barely any hair, large eyes.
And he was a man in black as well in the film.
Yeah.
But, what is the agenda of the men in black? Yes, to silence everybody, but
are they extraterrestrials that are here already?
Well, it happened to people in England as well. I'm not sure what year it was or what decade it was. It might have been the 50s, 60s or 70s. There was an Air Force base in England somewhere where there was a UFO sighting, and supposedly it landed in the forest nearby and all that sort of stuff. And everyone that was interviewed was also visited by men in black.
You're talking about Rendlesham Forest, which is what I just was talking about.
Yeah, probably the same one. Yeah,
it is the land in the forest,
just remember the name.
Right next to the Air Force base. Yeah, it was actually an American Air Force base as well, from memory.
Always American.
Yeah, but I suppose that they're trying to push. You probably got others that have not been documented properly. Like it's like we were saying previously on another episode. I'm pretty sure. Like, who's going to win that race?
It's going to be between. It's going to be between France or China, I think.
Yeah, but this will be like America's just stating, "Oh, we've got this has happened. This has happened." Like you go for a quick search up of UFO crashes, and I guarantee you 4 out of the 6 in America.
Yeah.
You've got Aurora, Texas. You've got
things out.
You got the Dundee County. You've got the Kecksburg. Pretty sure Shag Harbour as well.
Yes. Yeah. And
well, more Canada, but it's.
There's so many ways we can go with this. We've talked about the Men in Black, and only very briefly, but that they deserve an episode all on their own. Because
which can be done.
Yeah, well, we probably will look into it a bit more. But we originally started out talking about UFOs, but inevitably it leads to the Men in Black.
And it always will.
Yeah, well, they are connected. They are connected somehow. We just don't know that connection.
And how many Men in Black called the Men in White to turn around and try and take these mentally ill people that are seeing things off to hospitals?
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. They always leave these vaguely worded threats with people. Well, sometimes not vaguely worded, but enough to scare people. And some have spoken out and others haven't, but they've never been back. That we know of, In fact, there's a TV show on Stan, which all goes into the J. Allen Hynek story about when he first got introduced to, Project Blue Book and everything, and that touches on the Men in Black as well as a few other things. Obviously the big alien conspiracy cover up, the Majestic 12, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
And it's it's a pretty good show if you've not watched it. But I think it was 1969 Operation Blue Book shut down. I think I could be wrong, but and that's when America said that we're not interested in UFOs anymore. But then in recent times, obviously about the Nimitz and the Tic Tac video, and then there was the gimbal video, which everybody knows. I mean, God, you only have to type in the first few letters in YouTube, and then suddenly you're seeing all the videos come up and everything. Once they were released, I don't know how they were released, but it forced a situation where the American government said, yeah, we are still researching UFOs. So for a government department to say they are investigating them, there's obviously something there enough of a concern that they need to look into it and throw some dollars at it,
That's what I mean. You get that, and then you go into the whole thing of Area 51 comes into it, Bob Lazar's name comes into it. It's like, where do you stop? It's just a big rabbit hole that has many of tunnels leading off of it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with the American government. Because we know very little about what's out there, who's out there, if they're out there, and why are they coming in, and how come their technology is so far more advanced than ours. And that scares them. That scares the American government. That's why they shut everybody up.
Yeah, that's the problem with it, though, is everybody thinks that we're the be-all, end-all of civilization in the universe. We're infantile. Yeah, we're infantile, you know, and we don't even rate a 1 on the evolutionary scale of, you know, life in the cosmos. You know, I think 5 is basically godlike. But even to get to number 2 or 3, you're talking about being able to build Dyson spheres. That's building artificial structures around stars and around suns to harness the power of the solar energy from them. You know, we can't even build a bridge without it falling over. So we can, but
London Bridge didn't fall over by itself.
No, but again, going on in a completely different story. The Point Pleasant Bridge, the Silver Bridge at Point Pleasant, that went down, and that was the Mothman was around for that one, and then there's another one right there.
See, that's the thing though. Like in a universe, it's always expanding, as they say. How can we be the only ones?
It is, yeah, exactly. And one of the things that's been postulated at the moment about the origin of UFOs is, are they from the far reaches of our universe or galaxy or wherever? And then how do they have the propulsion to get here? Obviously, because everything takes so long to get places, which brings into question quantum drives where you can bend space-time, you know, portal drives and things like that. But going back to Bob Lazar, way back, he mentioned that when he obviously came out about everything, he said that they were fueled by element 115, which at that point in time did not exist on the periodic table. So everybody said he was an absolute crackpot, but guess what? It's there now.
Yeah, from the periodic table.
Good old Moscovium.
Yeah, and everybody talks about anti-gravity. Why does it have to be anti-gravity? You know, he said that the power source or the propulsion system of these UFOs was basically a sphere, and it was located sort of centrally in the cockpit area of the flying saucer. Why can't it be a gravity producer? I don't know what the correct term for that is, but everybody says to hover, you need to have anti-gravity thrusters to hover you up. But what if you could project a gravitational field above the UFO that was equal to the gravity below it? Then technically it would be hovering, wouldn't it? Because the gravity is equal to the force.
Positive energy like a magnet.
Yeah, and then if you can intensify that so the gravity field that you're producing is stronger than the gravitational pull of Earth, then it's going to lift up. And if you're talking about a race that can produce something like that, they're far more advanced than we are. Which goes back
nuclear.
It's beyond that. It's beyond that. If
they've got warp engines.
And yeah, and we get into the origin of UFOs, you know, where do they come from? Lately, Russia. Well, you never know. No.
Sorry. Going back to where you're saying about the atomic number 115 and Moscovium, that was only introduced to the periodic table in 2003.
Yeah.
And that was because of the Russians and the Americans working together in the nuclear labs.
Yeah, and that was long after it was all brought out.
Very long after.
By Bob Lazar. Now, where I was going originally with what I was just talking about was, if you look at the evolutionary image of man, you know, it starts off as the whatever, then it goes to the monkey, then it works its way up through the apes, and then, you know, Neanderthal, which I think they say now is a completely separate offshoot and not in the direct line of our evolution. But they get taller, they get more upright, they start to lose their hair, their heads change shape slightly to where we are now, Now, this is where it's a good sign, because Jay and I have both got no hair on the top of our heads. We're far more evolutionary advanced than Jeremy.
That's only because you're old.
Yeah, but where I'm going is, if you push that forward by another few thousand years, are we going to look like the Greys, the alien Greys?
Oh no,
Right?
you're going to look like dust in the ground.
Well, yeah, me personally, but what I'm saying is, as a species, if we're going to be like that, what's not to say that these craft that we're seeing aren't ourselves coming back in time to correct whatever they need to correct?
To time travel again.
Yeah, which leads right into
we're an experiment from whatever it is that's out there.
We're just stuck in a whole ant's nest and something's overseeing us. It's like an ant farm.
Well, yeah, that's been said as well, but I just think everything's tied together, because, like I said, if you think along those lines, it leads you right into the multiverse, multiverse theory, many world theories and things like that, where if they can create a portal between 2 points in our own galaxy, what's not to say they can't create the same portal between 2 points in different galaxies or different dimensions?
And everything runs on a parallel.
Yeah. I was actually listening to a podcast today where they were talking about, how did he put it? Basically, in some instances, have you ever woken up or you've come to the realization that everything's not quite right? It's the same, but something's not quite right.
Most mornings.
Yeah. Well,
I'm still alive.
They're sort of saying that what's not to say you aren't actually bouncing into an alternate reality where you're still you and everything's there, but it's just that little bit different, and then it corrects itself when you come back. Quite often people will say, oh, I had a little bit of dizzy spell, and then everything's not quite right, and then suddenly everything's back to normal again. What's not to say we're not skipping through alternate realities?
What if we're just sitting in a tank of saline and it's just videos that are getting played back to us?
No, you're just talking silly stuff now. Jay's face.
Well, not really. Like, what if what's happening isn't really happening and it's projected to us?
Well, that goes into the other theory, which is we've just totally gone right off topic. Right off topic.
Well, it's not really off topic. It goes in a big circle.
It does. Well, it doesn't just go in a circle.
Because then you get yeah.
It goes in many different directions, but one of the theories going around is that, do we live in a simulation? AKA the Matrix.
Yeah. See, now we're going to that. I've always thought as a kid, what if when you jump in your car, you're really in one spot and everything's moving from underneath you? I know it sounds stupid. I think I was about 8 the first time I thought of it.
No, I think I've had that same thought in the past as well. And
like being on a big old treadmill that goes whatever way you want.
Yeah. And funny
pretty
enough,
much with the hamsters on a wheel.
Eh?
Yeah.
Pretty much with hamsters on the wheel.
Well, like what Jeremy was saying before, we could just be somebody's ant farm.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, but then that comes into your UFOs or UAPs, whatever you want to call them. Is that glimpses of things that are coming past at that time, but it's always the same message. Look after the earth, look after each other, look after civilization. What? Like, for something we know nothing about, and they're going, look after this, look after that. Well, obviously there's a reason.
Yeah.
And that's what blows me out, Jeremy, because the Native Americans still lived like that. And if you have a look at all their pictographs and hieroglyphs and everything through time, they all depict a UFO and an alien-like creature.
Yeah, I think we've brought that up when we're talking about other things as well.
So there's one race of people that have actually stuck to what they've been taught by whoever it is that's out there, but the rest of us haven't followed suit.
It's like the ancient Egyptians, the same thing.
And always. That's what I was saying before. It goes through all the different cultures. So there's got to be something more to it, Different...
So the Native Americans believe everything works in a circle from childhood to childhood. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
you're born, you go through life, you die, you come back again as a child.
Yeah.
You start all over
There you
again.
go. That's exactly what we were talking about the other night, Gary. With Lynn.
Yep. Which I've just got the notification has just gone live.
Awesome. Hey,
So,
and
anyway, I think that's it for
this
tonight.
makes more sense.
We're
When
gonna-
we go to rewatch, I think it'll make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, we're going to call this one tonight, and we will see you guys next week. So take it easy, everyone.
Where are you going? Don't leave me. I need you. Where are you? I miss you. Stay with me. If you leave, I'll never forgive you. Don't you run away.
Hey, where you going? Tell me. Where are you? Please stay.